But yeah, welcome today, September 9th. We're starting to get back to school. And today we've got a bit of things on our agenda. Let me share my screen here. Oops. Let's forget you can't share your screen before you. Here we go. This is us. Today's agenda. Welcome and introduction. We are here. This is the place we are right now. Dave's going to give us an update and talk a little bit about Walk to School Day. I'm going to have a kind of data heavy, but I think good COVID and back to school presentation. And I'm going to speed to that so we can get to a small group discussion that I think is going to be really good, where we can learn a bit from each other as we're going back to school and seeing how some of this programming is working out. So with that, I will actually turn it over to Dave for the moment.
Great. I'm going to try and go fast too, because I'm interested in the small group discussion. So we're going to try and leave as much time as we can on the back end of this to hear, particularly from those of you that are implementing safe routes right now as school gets kicking off. It says that I have the screen sharing is disabled for me, Eric, so you might need to change something on the back end there. And then while you do that, I'm just going to tap dance.
All right.
I don't know. I actually don't know how to tap dance. I can do it now.
I've saved you.
All right, let's see. All right. So most of us have met, but I did see a couple of new faces. So I do want to introduce myself. I'm Dave Cowan. I'm the Safe Routes to School Coordinator at the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And I can usually be found on these calls with Eric, providing a little bit of an update of what's going on at MnDOT. And so I'm planning to do that. Can I get a thumbs up? People see my screen? I think that's the case. Cool. Thank you. I just dropped this photo in because this is a picture from my kid's school this morning. And it's like a non-event bike day. And this is the elementary school. The middle school was even crazier with people walking and biking, but also with people driving. So I think most of you all are probably paying attention to what is national news right now, that there's transportation issues that schools are facing, and that they don't have enough bus drivers, they don't have enough buses, and they can't get kids to school. And that's causing problems nationally. If you didn't see it, Streets Blog actually dropped a really informative article on this that can help you wrap your head around the why of it. And I think that's important because, well, Safe Routes to School isn't the entire solution here. There really is an opportunity for our work. And it is going to be, I think, a balance of, taking advantage of the moment where there really aren't other options for parents. They don't have school buses, and so they're faced with either driving, and in some districts like my kid's school, and I know St. Paul, they're turning to like paying parents to drive, which is a reverse incentive for what we're really looking for. It's difficult to compete with, and we need to be, of course, sensitive to a lot of the issues that the pandemic is causing at schools and not overwhelm already overwhelmed staff and administration. But also, we have a real solution here for students that live close enough that have decided to bus because they can. So anyway, I wanted to lead with that because I think in the small group discussion, we'll probably get into it a little bit more, but I'm curious how people are kind of seizing the moment, taking advantage of the fresh start effect, as we've learned about at the beginning of school, to maybe instill the habit of walking and biking to school on kids and families. And of course, one way to do that is Walk to School Day. Just we have 1 month to plan for it. I hope you all have something underway, even if it's a low-key announcement at the school, to maybe a full-fledged event, depending on your school or district. But you have a month left. You can get registered for it at walkbiketoschool.org. When you do that, we mail you or even sometimes hand deliver a boatload of resources for those schools. So if you're trying to have an easy way to connect to school, we ask you to sign them up. We'll send them some posters to put up. We'll send them spoke cards and stickers and little reflective zipper pulls. All those things we send out to schools that register before the end of September, or I think it's like September 28th, giving us enough time to get that mailing out to folks. So please do register at walkbiketoschool.org. It does a couple of things. It helps us connect with those schools and provide them the resources that can be helpful, but it also helps us keep track of folks that are doing safe routes to school activities around the state. And the question has come up in the past. So for like district coordinators or some of you RDC planners on the call, it's ideal for the school themselves to be the person that's registered. So if there's a champion at the school, or maybe the principal is the person you've been working with, to use their name, so that we can send those materials directly to them and kind of get them in the communication funnel. In addition to that, there are online versions of some of these things. So you can go on to the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Resource Center in our Walk to School Day section. There's posters that you can download. There's pre-defined social media posts. There's sample text for principals to read over the intercom to advertise the Walk to School Day. Of course, there's links to all of the great walk, bike, fun curriculum and distance learning activities that the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota created last year during the pandemic, and a handful of like games and activities. So like word searches and bingo and mileage trackers. So those can be picked up in the walk bike fun, or sorry, the Walk to School Day section of the Minnesota Safe Routes to School website. And normally I have Kelly here, who's like all on top of dropping links to these things. So I'm going to have to do that when I get done here. I'll go back in the chat and provide links to some of the things I've asked for here.
I'll try and do some of that for you, Dave.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
I'll try.
Appreciate it. And then, of course, our photo contest. Just a gentle reminder that if you can encourage the communities that you're working with around Walk to School Day to snap pictures, to share those back with you, or to share them back with us directly, enter them in our photo contest. They can do that on our Facebook page, Minnesota Safe Routes to School, with the hashtag MinWalks. Or maybe you're new to Safe Routes, but I can't actually, let me see if I expand this to grid mode, if I can actually now see everybody that's logged on. I think we have a lot of veterans to Walk to School Day here, but we also have some new folks. So there are just a handful of ideas for things that you might do with your Walk to School Day in your school or district. Get in on the transportation mailings. You know, as the school is kicking off, there's a ton of communication going on right now from transportation departments to families, and options are a good idea. You know, frankly, we should have been, all those transportation communications should include walking and biking information anyway, but if they don't, they should. They can provide safety tips. They can provide links if your schools or districts have maps for safe walking routes. It's a great chance to get out in front of parents and communicate that. Additionally, I know at my kids' school, there's also a lot of communication coming from the PTO in the school right now. So tapping into that, as well as Meet the Teacher and Back to School Day events with promotional materials. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be there tabling, and, you know, it's connecting with the folks that are running these and seeing if they can get some information out there. Of course, if you can be there, that's great too. Walking school buses, we've talked about a lot on here, but small groups of students that walk and bike together to make it a little bit safer trip. And you know, I really think with what's going on with busing issues right now is, you know, the walking school bus is a great solution. They can be a little bit of a lift in terms of executing them, but something we're doing at my kids' school where we can't, where initiating and staffing all the walking school buses isn't really an option. Is we're just trying to connect families that are either currently walking and biking or are interested and want to share that with people that live nearby them. And so we're collecting that information and just connecting those families with some ideas around what a walking school bus or a bike train can look like. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the fully formed walking school bus there. You could serve as a liaison to parents. Establishing a remote drop-off location or bus stop and walks is another option for planning for walk to school day. And of course, online, we have crossing guard trainings and school patrol trainings that are available to schools in Minnesota that you can be sharing, as I'm sure a lot of new parents and old parents and administration are identifying a lot of the pinch points with the arrival and dismissal process, and probably have some fears and concerns that could be alleviated by having an adult or even a trained youth out there helping students cross the street. So there's just a couple of ideas. There's lots more, and I hope to hear more of them in our small group because I'm sure you're all working on them. We talked about this last month, so I'm not going to dive into the details of all of these solicitations, but I will tell you that next month, almost immediately after Walk to School Day, we'll open up our grant solicitations at MnDOT. That includes a lot of different opportunities for you all. We will, again, hold a solicitation for planning assistance statewide. We will again hold a solicitation for Safe Routes to School Boost or implementation grants. If you have questions about those, you can go back to last month's webinar and watch it on the website. There's a lot more detail there, or both the kind of the non-infrastructure planning assistance and boost grants will have webinars available in the coming month, 2 months, as well as our infrastructure solicitation. So the state funded infrastructure solicitation and the TA infrastructure solicitation for Greater Minnesota. If you've got infrastructure projects in your plans and you've been trying to think about how to fund them, this fall is the time to do it. And if you don't have them yet, or you haven't looked through the plans for communities that you work with, it might be a good time to go through there and grab those priorities and start working with them on what's needed for an application. And because there's usually a question about funding, I'm actually going to pause for a second and just see if anything pops up in the chat or.
Yeah, Dave, this is Naomi Carlson with HRDC. Hey,
Hi, Naomi.
One quick thought I had is this an opportunity with those webinars to invite our champions within the schools to attend with us? Maybe that's a no-brainer, but to me, I've never actually done that where I've invited them to it. It's usually like me learning and then bringing that back to my steering committee.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest for that?
Well, I'll tell you what the content of the webinar is, and you can decide, I think, whether or not you think that would be useful. The webinar is very focused on the application and helping understand what project you have that you would like to apply for, and then how you will complete that application and how that application will be scored. So that might be useful to them, but there isn't a lot of background on safe routes. There's not a lot of content on that as much as like a little bit of like guiding folks through the process, making sure they understand all the steps and what it takes to prepare a competitive application.
Awesome, thank you.
And I said this on the last call, but I'll say it again here, which is it is an unprecedented amount of funding for state infrastructure in particular. So if you haven't worked with an infrastructure project in the past, state funding has fewer. Well, first of all, it doesn't require a match, so that can be 100% of the project is paid for with those state funds. And additionally, it just tends to have, it's a little bit easier to work with than federal funds. So that is something that is generally a draw for communities. So we have those solicitations opening after Walk to School Day. I thought it was worth also getting on your radar, if it isn't yet, that AAA has a couple of small traffic safety grants available, so up to about $1,200 and they have multiple categories there, but one of the categories is school zone safety. So maybe if you're looking to do something in the school zone there's been some people have noticed some things with the increased traffic around schools during the school year, and you want to go out there and address it. This would be a good chance to do that. I think they're going to do about 50 grants through Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, and North Dakota. So take a look. And then America Walks has community change grants. If you haven't seen those before, they're up to about $1,500, and they tend to be focused on small projects you're doing related to creating healthy, active, inclusive, accessible, and engaged places to live, work, and play. And Safe Routes definitely falls in that category. So that's a little bit on Walk to School Day, on funding opportunities. I have one last request of you all, and I'm going to ask you to get prepared here. If you're away from your screen, come to your screen. We are in basically the last phase of deciding what the Minnesota Safe Routes to School new brand is going to look like. That's kind of exciting because if you don't remember or haven't seen enough of the current brand, here it is. And we're going to be changing that quite a bit. We've done some engagement with you all on previous calls, and I'm going to try and do a Mentimeter here, and let's see if I fail you miserably or not.
Just put it in the chat there for you.
Great. So there's the Mentimeter in the chat. I have to close this and see if I can also. So we've got a couple of options, and I'm realizing now as I look at my screen that it's actually a little bit pixelated. The new logo isn't pixelated. It's not supposed to be that way, but maybe it looks like that. So I'm gonna walk you through 4 versions. They're all very similar, and I'll talk through just what the tiny differentiations are. But we landed on this after a great deal of discussion with you all, and as well with the Safe Routes to School State Steering Committee. And we have these 4 options. And so where we're at right now is we're pretty close to visually, or I guess, how am I going to differentiate this? We're going to be looking at different color palettes, and we're going to be looking a little bit at different iconography in this. And so you'll have a chance to, on each one of these, it's open to make a comment as I pull them up and describe them to you. The way this is adapted, I think a lot of what we heard last time is, it has this arch that kind of brings this togetherness. It includes more modes than the last time we talked about this. There were some suggestions around hey, what about a skateboard or a scooter? And so we added those. And please do put your comments in here, because while I can't watch them closely right now, I will use this the responses here today to kind of go back and make our final decision. And it's using this color palette that very closely matches the Minnesota state logo, with the exception of kind of the, I think the color red there is called watermelon. So this is one option. For those of you that are doing this and providing comments on this particular one that I have up right now, are you able to move forward to the next slide in Mentimeter without me authorizing it? Anybody know?
I think once you go to the next slide, it'll move for us.
You know what, so I think we got 13 comments here. I'll wait for just maybe 30 more seconds. If anybody has anything they want to add to it, do that, and then I will move us to the next version of the logo. All right, so this probably looks pretty familiar to you, because it's not too different from what we were just looking at, except we tried on a safety orange, which was one of the suggestions that came out of the different colors that we had available to us. It still includes all of the different modes, but other than that, it's strikingly similar to the previous version. So I guess I would ask you here, what do you like about this version? What do you dislike about it? I will add on the color palette, one of the things that we heard, nobody verbalized this, I think, on the last time we talked about this, but in our surveying, we heard some discussion about the color of the state aligning with political affiliations and being careful about that. And so that's why you're seeing states right now, the outline of the state and colors different than what we had on the last round, as we were trying to figure out how we might do this, where we would not be red or blue for the state. So a little bit fewer comments rolling in on this one. I'll wait maybe 15, 30 more seconds here. You know, someone made a note here about the heart being on there. We've heard mixed on this, but I would say about 80% of our respondents liked the heart and 20% did not. And it was definitely, it was either like or very much dislike. So
strong opinions.
Yes, as they go. All right, let's try the next one. The only thing that you'll probably notice differently here is the green state. All of the other colors remain relatively the same. Something that's come up and is worth considering, I think, when we're looking at having more modes, is that we've got this blown up right now, which is why it looks pixelated, because I did that hastily. So sorry about that. But the other part is that when this scales down to something that might be in the upper, right-hand corner of a piece of paper, it may be more difficult to recognize the characters scaled smaller. And so that's something that we're trying to decide. Some comments on the green. I think it's worth stating that is actually a color is called Minnesota green. It's a part of the Minnesota State safe route, or not safe routes, the Minnesota State color palette. So you'll see that same green in all state agency logos. Holding on for just 15 more seconds. All right. So the last version, and maybe the way to think about this one is not the color scheme, because the color scheme is the same as the previous one, is it has fewer people participating in walking and rolling. And so probably scales a little bit better. But other than that, it's very similar to the prior one. We could theoretically use the fewer people with different colors with the final version of the logo. Yeah, there's a mention about the lopsidedness of the icons. That was how we ended up with more modes too, was couldn't figure out a good way to balance it. All right, maybe 10 more seconds. And now this is going to be the part where your input will probably count the most. I posted, oh, that's the end of the presentation. So now you get a chance to actually vote multiple choice here. I'm not going to let you see other people's results or other people's votes, so it doesn't influence your choice. But I would love if you would go ahead and take a look at the logos below and choose the one that you like the most. Now they're a little bit smaller now. That's actually maybe good, because you can see what it would look like with the scaled to a smaller size. All right, we've got 14 votes that have come in, and I'm not counting how many people are on the call right now. Maybe somebody else can tell. We're up to 21. My goal is 100% participation in voting. A democratic miracle.
As I say, as someone who does a lot of surveys, good luck on that.
We're all here. We're all here. Luke's saying there's 32 people on the call, 24 respondents. Who's not voting? You don't have to say your name, but maybe you can just jump on and vote. Tile's not moving. Hopefully these are the folks that are out on a walk while they're listening to the call. I can't get to the screen. All right, I'm holding for maybe 10 more seconds. All right. Your votes have been recorded. And that is all I have. So if you want to take over here, Eric, or if anybody has any questions, I guess, for me.
What the heck? Can we see the results?
Oh, Jimmy, you wish, don't you? Uh-huh.
What?
You want to be able to see them?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Keyboard shortcut. The reason that you can't see the results now is because I can't figure out how to unhide them.
Well,
I mean, I'm clicking on the thing.
they might have to go a wanting.
I think you gotta hit the letter H on your keyboard, maybe.
Oh, there we go. There we go. So can you see that now? There was a heavy preference here for the logo with the green state and all modes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to take over because we got little
please do.
time.
Yes, thank you.
So we got through the MnDOT update. We are here at COVID update, and I'm sorry, this is a lot of information, and I am absolutely going to fly through it because I do want people to be able to have this small group discussion. So just know that there will be links that we'll put in the chat. You can go back and look at these slides later. We'll have those linked on the MnDOT website that I will send you an email about tomorrow, or rather either later today or tomorrow. So for this update, we're going to look at quickly where we're at in numbers for Minnesota. How is it impacting school transportation? What is the policy guidance for Minnesota schools, and what resources are available? So this map I found the most useful. I got this from New York Times. It's just showing you the share of population with a reported case. We've got our daily average of cases at 1,600. It's about 28 per 100,000. We're increasing. That's up 30% over 2 weeks. And again, because things are changing so fast, I got these numbers on Friday. I'm sure they've changed since then, but not hugely. So here's a bigger look at the trends. New reported cases by day is the graph in the top left. And in that bottom right of it, you can kind of see after July where we're at, and we are increasing a bit right now. Same with hospitalizations, we're on the uptrend. On the lower left here, we're testing more, which is good. It's getting a little bit harder to get tests. And with deaths are increasing, but they've all gotten quite a bit lower since vaccinations, which is great. You can kind of look at like this big drop after a lot of our population got vaccinated. So this is kind of what's interesting to a lot of educators. Minnesotans with at least one dose, 12 to 15-year-olds, as a little over 50%, a little bit less for completed vaccinations, 16 and 17-year-olds, over half, and like almost 60% with at least one dose. So we have the total vaccinations down here, kind of like a map of who's getting vaccinated. And it's kind of up in the air right now as to when the vaccine is going to be approved by the FDA for children ages 5 to 11, which is a huge portion of our school age students. So some people are hoping that it'll happen by Christmas, but others are saying that it'll likely be more around 2022. So this is kind of what it's doing. We've got a huge dearth of bus drivers, as Dave talked about. Many students won't get bus service at all. This is kind of a mixed bag. It prevents access for a lot of students. And what we can really just do is try to do our best to make biking and walking a safe and viable alternative. These big paradigm shifts are a spot for real behavior change. So some students are being asked to ride transit. If you look at like St. Paul, high school students are being asked to ride transit. Parents are being asked to drive, and in some places will get compensated for driving, which Dave touched on. And again, this is really rough. It increases car traffic to schools, decreases safety for students who are biking and walking, while increasing emissions around the school. In terms of equitability, it really isn't equitable because most districts are requiring driver's licenses and insurance to enroll in reimbursements programs, which many immigrant families do not have. And it also requires that you have access to a car, and car ownership is lowest among low-income earners and BIPOC folks. So this is not equitable. This is counter pretty much everything that we want to do. And then we have a lack of crossing guards. This is, again, folks kind of being worried about being exposed to COVID-19. And if we're looking at outbreaks right now. So I'm sure you all saw in the news, Albert Lee, within the first 5 days of school, had 39 students who were affected. And that was kind of a big deal, and it caused a big rethink. So to break up all this sadness, hey, look, it's some kids riding bikes on the Greenway. This is what we want. This is our opportunity zone, getting kids biking again. But back to policy guidance. This is the hardest one for me to put together because there's a lot of different people saying different things, and things are changing. There is some mass confusion. Right now, it's up to individual school districts to decide policies. Parents are taking Governor Walz to court to require masks in all schools today. So let's keep an eye on that and see what happens. New federal guidance on combating COVID will be put out by Biden today. And again, that's probably going to affect us. Everyone is expecting that administration to talk a lot more about schools and really pushing for vaccinations. The CDC recommends face masks for all students and staff, even if they're vaccinated. The CDC requires masks on school buses and transit. The Minnesota Department of Health recommends all people ages 12 and up get vaccinated before returning to schools. They also recommend face masks for all students and staff, regardless of vaccination status, while indoors. So then just to kind of like go back to it, Albert Lee went back to school with no masks, and then they changed their policy after having that outbreak. So it's kind of showing us that although some of these things are up to individual schools and school districts, they are able to change and adapt to new information and better strategies. So I'm just going to pause here because that's a lot. It's like this crazy pandemic that we've all been living with and try not to think about without losing our minds. But does anybody have a quick question or comment about any of the status updates, policies? I mean, we're going to have some breakout rooms after this, so we can really get to the meat of it. But if anyone has any quick questions, I would hear them now.
I don't know if this was so much a question, Eric, but just a little, I don't know if insight is the right word, but awareness of some schools that will be requiring students to get vaccinations, and just wanting to watch and see how that unfolds.
Yeah, so I think LA County, some other big school districts across the country are starting to do that. And I think that, you know, it's a decent precedent because we already require students to get measles, mumps, rubella, those kinds of vaccinations. So that is definitely something to watch. And we'll see, again, if we get a push from the state and or federal government in the coming days. Well, with that, I'm going to go through some quick resources that we have. First one, I think is probably the most apt right now, and it's from Vision Zero for Youth. Dave sent me this, and it is just great can I get to click on it? This is a really amazing team of people that came together from Department of Health, Safe Routes to Schools, National, all sorts of folks, the American Academy of Pediatrics. And they have basically 3 big tabs up here that are going to help us out. These key travel strategies are kinds of the things that we really think about in terms of safe routes to schools, encouraging active travel to school, addressing the safety of students using active transportation by managing vehicle speeds. These are the kinds of things with infrastructure projects that you can get through safe routes to schools. So the general ideas here are things that you're going to be aware of. The national guidance and recommendations, I wish I would have seen this before I went and searched out the rest of them, because it's all here. And even things I hadn't even considered: COVID-19 and safe transportation in motor vehicles, COVID guidance for safe schools, mask requirements for bikes, walking. So this is a huge resource for what kind of recommendations and guidance different organizations are putting out. But I think this last tab on the right, community actions and innovations, this is really some great stuff. So a lot of the things that Dave was talking about already for Walk to School Day: expanded school walk zones, slow streets, park and walk programs, all of these different strategies. When you click on them, a lot of the times it will give you more information about these strategies, and sometimes it'll even give you examples of people doing it around the country. So here's an example of a bike and walk, or a park and walk, sorry. And I think that everybody should take some time on this site who's here, because if you haven't, it is absolutely fantastic. So a little bit of ray of sunshine in this COVID world, some good strategies. The next one that I was going to share is this pedbikeinfo. So this was made last year, but still super relevant as we're going into a similar situation. And so this is all about walking and rolling, and just 3 strategies, 3 pages, very short and concise. How can we appeal to families to choose walking and biking? So making some good arguments for it. How will we address physical distancing for walking and cyclists? So these kind of like keeping each other safe with COVID. Where and how can bikes be parked, and what else can help reduce the amount of private vehicle traffic arriving at school? This one's even more important now as people are being incentivized to drive. And then the last one that I will share is from Safe Routes to Schools. And if you haven't been here yet, this is another great resource page. I think the 2020 recommendations for Safe Routes to School programming, again, developed last year. So much information that's so good. It's dense, 55 pages, but you've got a lot of really good strategies that are really thought out. So if you haven't taken a look, please do. Again, I'll link these all in the chat, and then also you can go back to this at the end when we send out an email with all this information. So with all of that being said, I think what I'd like to do is we're going to have a quick breakout, and I'm going to share with all of y'all a Google Doc, so just one person can write in each group. But we're kind of curious as to what were some new challenges you experienced with implementing Safe Routes to Schools last year with COVID-19 pandemic, and then this year, because things have changed again. And so what strategies or resources did you utilize to overcome these challenges, or are you utilizing? And where do you still need support? So we're really hoping that there can be a conversation where y'all can learn maybe what it is from each other that you're experiencing, see if you maybe have some different strategies that you can pick up from each other. And I will quickly send this link for the Google Doc. And then I'm going to break y'all into groups. But again, do we have any questions?
Do you have any suggestions on how we identify the note taker, facilitator when we break out?
Birthday that is closest to today.
We might use okay. Sounds good.
All right, and we'll go into, we'll say 5 breakout rooms. And we will give y'all 15 minutes, and yeah, we'll come back in 15 and just wrap up. So here we go.
Five new food service directors, and we have 6 new superintendents. I can't even tell you how many new principals in those 16 school districts. So if there could be an organization in your school district that takes on safe routes to school, or even have it in your wellness policy, that would be good.
Yes, yeah, those are all things that we're looking to get established.
Okay. Hi, Eric.
Buddy.
So Erin is a parent volunteer from MnDOT. And so it's so wonderful to have a parent volunteer on this call that is passionate about safe routes to school.
That's awesome.
I should say my background is in public health, so kind of personal
Even
interest.
better.
Yes, and I'm familiar with grant writing, so trying to help our school district do what I can to, fund some projects and initiate some of this work.
So great. So Luke, did you write down the questions, or Eric, do you want to, or do we remember him?
I got the school bus. I typed that out here.
Yeah, it's in the chat too. There's a Google Doc that has the questions in them.
Yeah, Luke's got the Google Doc up.
Maybe that's working.
So
the first question, I just opened it as well, is what were some of the new challenges you experienced with implementing safe routes to school last year with the COVID-19 pandemic? And then, were there sort of different challenges this year or similar challenges?
Well, actually, I'll answer for all the school districts I work with. It's low on their priority list. So it moved down, way down. But more kids and families are walking and biking to school. Even though the school districts have moved it way down. They're just trying to figure out what to do daily with COVID. So that would be my response. And it's the same both years.
Our safe route school stuff, we had to do everything virtual. Almost everything other than the school hazard assessment. And this was last year for updating the plan. It was pretty much all virtual. So it wasn't as, the community engagement wasn't there. So. And for this year now, implementing the goals, we'll start doing that. I guess I don't really have an answer though, since the plan just was adopted in June. So I guess we'll start looking at it now for this school year. So.
And I think in MnDOT, there's a lot of interest in this, and kind of people see that it's a good alternative to crowded busing or having everyone drive. But I think overall, the school administration is really preoccupied. They have a lot that's that they need to attend to. Other priorities.
I'm glad there's a lot of interest.
I was gonna say maybe for the second, or for the what strategies or resources to overcome. I think with Karen, you mentioning that the schools, it's just low on their priority list and whatnot. having the cities, or yeah, this, Lakefield and Jackson, for the school, it's the districts in both communities. The cities have folks like committees that help work on these strategies, so it's not all on the schools. So that's been helpful over the past several years.
Good idea.
Yeah, similarly, we've leaned on our city council and city staff to, make some, just implement some low cost changes like striping streets and
Exactly.
signage, and, really tried to emphasize that the schools are busy and this is something that the city could do to help out.
Great. Great. One of the things that I still think is the best possible, getting kids excited about riding bikes, is to have bike fleets. And we happen to have 8 bike fleets in our area serving 9 different school districts, or 8 bike fleets serving 10 school districts. And there is that boost grant coming up, so that might be something. If your school district, Aaron, doesn't have a bike fleet, consider that.
You said that was the grant?
Yep.
Okay.
That boost grant can be used for a bike fleet, and bike fleets typically cost, for 40 bikes, somewhere in the like $36,000 to $40,000 range, if you also get the trailer that houses the bikes. Now, we did one for a lot cheaper in Underwood with 30 bikes, and that was $25,000. And actually SHIP funded that one, and we just finished it up.
Great. Has it been like possible to get bikes with this giant bike shortage?
That is a really good question, Eric. So I started calling our local bike shop in February, and he said, yeah, if you need, I have enough in my storeroom, but can you decide right now? Because if you don't, if I have to order, you will not get them until July of 2022. But he happened to have enough on hand.
Wow. Apparently I made these breakout rooms too short. Now only 10 minutes. Boo! But maybe this will give us an opportunity to kind of share back with the big group.
We didn't answer all the questions, did we, Luke?
I think it was pretty close.
The last one was kind of, where do you still need support?
Okay. We need an Erin in every, she's already left, but we need an Erin in every
More
in every
parents.
school district.
Yeah, more
Yeah.
parent involvement.
Yeah.
Love it.
See you guys soon.
I have a slight fail in making that too short, but it's also a win that we get to come back and kind of share out what we have heard. Is there anybody that had any big takeaways that they thought was a revelation that they want to share with the group?
I just want to give a shout out to, we have Erin who's on this call, who is a parent who just believes so much in safe routes to school, and she's from MnDOT. And we all need Erin in our school districts. We all need to find that champion. And my encouragement was to her is somehow make it sustainable, like have somebody in that school district own safe routes to school, because her kids will get older and she'll leave us. But if she can leave a legacy of safe routes to school, that would be great.
Another group want to go?
Dave, I was in, or Dave, I'm sorry. I can't talk. For our group too, just having the city and county be involved with some of the implementation of the goals from the plans. over the years, that's what's been done down here in Southwest Minnesota, and I think it's been helpful. Kind of takes some of the stress off the schools too.
Yeah, and we were talking specifically with infrastructure, correct?
Yeah, yep.
Well, if you were taking notes, please throw them into that Google Doc so everybody can kind
Eric,
of.
one of the problems with the Google Doc is that none of us had write access. So I took notes in a separate document. That's probably why you didn't see anybody taking notes.
Boo.
You might want to unlock that, and maybe those of us that took notes could drop those in before we hang up. I presume that's why other people didn't take notes. That's why I didn't take notes. Anybody else? I'll speak for our group if no one else wants to go. I'd rather not speak for our group. Jenny, Tina, Sam.
I think since you took notes, you should probably do, or didn't you say you were taking notes?
I took notes. I just talk a lot, so I was hoping to hear other voices, but I can go. Yeah. So, well, Tina mentioned that it was just difficult to get a hold of the schools. That it was not a priority. Thinking about walking bike days, Jenny mentioned, was just virtually impossible with distance learning, or hard to wrap your head around. But there were some positives around, like being able to use the online tools, maybe specifically Walk Bike Fun having gone online, having access to the Bike MN fleet, all of that felt even better after not having it for a while at the beginning of the pandemic, or having it reduced access. And then I guess I'm bouncing back to question one, but just, it was harder to do planning in some ways because, well, you had the administrators' attention maybe a little bit more than if they had a full classroom in the school or full classes in the school. The community really wasn't able to be as big of a part of the planning process.
Rad. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. Again, if you took some notes, feel free to throw them in that Google Doc so we can all kind of learn from each other here as we go along. But
yeah, we'll put that in the slide deck that gets sent out after this, so that'll be in there along with the results from the Mentimeter and any slides that Eric and I had.
Yeah, so this week's link will be a juicy one. You guys will want to go to it for all those resources. But with that, thank you all so much for coming.
I appreciate your participation, everybody. See you next time.
Stay safe.